to the show. This show is all about you. Not you, but you and your story. Because everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer.
Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer, and this is part 2 of A Week in Vegas. Now, usually I would say, you can start with any episode you want and kind of, you don't have to go in order and listen one through now. But this is one where I would say definitely listen to last week's episode, the one that aired on May 26th, as that's A Week in Vegas Part 1. This is the follow-up, A Week in Vegas Part 2. So if you like Back to the Future Part 1, you're going to love Back to the Future Part 2 here as we go deeper and finish off the week. Last week, we talked about various things about their week in Vegas, largely about Daniel and Marcus, the indie wrestling shows they went to, their collectibles, their adventures. Now we're going to get to what is, I guess, the main event and talk about actually what happened that drew most people into Las Vegas, which was Wrestlemania. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my two guests in this week. So once again, Daniel, Marcus, thank you both for joining. I really appreciate the time. And for continuity's sake, I wanted to prove to everybody that this was not filmed on the same day. I'm in a different room. I'm wearing a different hat, and I'm wearing a different sweatshirt. So, it's not the same day. You guys went out of your way and added to your calendar, so I appreciate that, and thank you for joining.
No worries.
Thanks for having us. Yeah. Also, I decided to change today, so I didn't want
Nice.
to wear the same thing for a whole week to record for you, Jeff.
That's a long time to be wearing the same clothes, so I do appreciate that. So at the end of the show, I'll get into all the usual credits, the Instagrams, and all that kind of fun stuff. I do want to remind everybody, of course, that this show is brought to you by JeffSeltzer.com for all your Jeff Seltzer needs. Please check out JeffSeltzer.com. With that said, I did want to get into the next part of what we did not talk about in last week's episode, which was kind of the main event of the week. So WrestleMania is the thing that brings everyone to Vegas this year. Obviously, all the little shows and conventions and such wouldn't have a place or wouldn't have consumers if it wasn't for WrestleMania. So here we are. So before getting into your actual experiences at WrestleMania, I wanted to kind of walk through your journey a little bit of the tickets you got, how you got it, and how you decided to go. So I'll start with Daniel because I was with him a little bit on the mission in terms of when he decided, how he decided, and kind of like where he landed for WrestleMania. So Daniel, you want to take us a little bit through what that looked like for you?
Yeah, sure. And first thing, as I mentioned on the first part, obviously it was super stressful not having you to plan my WrestleMania. So let's be perfectly clear, I had to do this myself. So and
that won't happen again, Daniel. I can promise you that at least for 2026, I'm doing everything I can. My calendar is clear. I am your personal concierge once again.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, so my story really started when I was chatting to you that day and actually decided to go to WrestleMania. So made the call about maybe 6-8 weeks out that I was going to go. So then booked my hotels, booked my flights, got ahead of the independent wrestling, but really didn't overly stress about getting Mania tickets. So pretty much every single time I seen Jeff, he asked me if I had my Mania tickets yet. I could see the anxiety level coming from you was higher than myself. But really, for everyone listening, the real reason is that you've kind of ruined my WrestleMania forever because now I need to sit in a box. So last year, Jeff and I actually got some great seats. We had some really nice seats at Philadelphia. The first time I'd ever really sort of spent that sort of money for a wrestling event. But once you've kind of done that, it's hard to go back. So,
and Daniel, on a side note, also, I do want to call out that even though I didn't realize it at the time, we did sit with Marcus's buddy Katana Chance in our suite as well, which. Marcus gave me an earful about the fact that I didn't even know who these people were, yet I was hanging out with Caden Carter, Katana Chance, Omos. We did recognize, but the other ones we weren't really sure who they were.
Oh, I'm glad that you recognize the 7'2" Nigerian guy.
Yeah, he definitely sticks out, So I'm sorry, Daniel. Continue, please.
There's a story about Jeff taking a
So I am the worst, by the way. But let's continue.
Yeah. So basically, I actually didn't buy my tickets until about 36 hours before WrestleMania Night 1. So after multiple texts by Jeff, I finally got around to doing it. I'd always planned to go to at least one of the 2 nights when I was there, but just looking at the price of the official box seats, they were super expensive. So I actually used a company I'd never used before, Sweet Hop. They basically are a bit like a StubHub for nicer seats essentially, and got a really good deal about 36 hours before. So a lot less than what Jeff and I paid last year. Pretty much left it to the last minute. So I had pretty good seats. I would say I was halfway up the stadium, sort of on the announcer side where the commentary team is, that side of the ring. So kind of away from the entrance ramp, but fantastic seats. Really, really great food and drink. Great experience. And that was the Saturday. So I decided just to do the Saturday only. And then on the Sunday, I actually did something I've kind of wanted to do for a while. Sounds kind of sad, but actually go to a WrestleMania watch party. So found a really cool brewery to go to on the Sunday, and just went to. And for anyone listening, imagine just like NFL Sunday games, that type of atmosphere, but just for wrestling fans. So it's a great experience at the brewery for that one. So that was kind of how I got to where I was.
Nice. So Daniel, first of all, thank you for sharing. What I would ask also is, so I know you talked a little bit about like where the seats were. The suite was that you were sitting at for the event. So was there anything else, any other bonuses or anything else included in your seats? And in looking at it, were there other seats that you wish you had jumped for? Were you overall satisfied with where you landed?
Yeah, for the price, it was brilliant. So it was a really good setup. So last year, where what Jeff and I had is you were in a suite and it was individual food in each room essentially. This one sort of had like a communal area that had multiple bars, really nice food. So the food was, I'd say, a step up on last year. It was prime rib, it was seafood tower, it was all this type of stuff. So and the other thing as well is you got to pick your actual seat in the suite. So last year, Jeff and I got there, it was first come first serve. So we got there like 3 hours before it starts, so Jeff could get front row in our suite. This year I actually got to book my seats. I had the first row, number one, so I knew where I was going to be sitting. The food was fantastic. It was free alcohol for the whole time as well. So great seats. What I liked as well about it is the angle was great. There was no sort of glass blocking your view, nothing like that. And the atmosphere was great. The only thing I would say is I've had a chance to get slightly better when a little bit further round towards the ringside would have been a little bit better. But given the fact that I booked it at 36 hours notice, I was pretty happy with how it all played out.
Awesome. Daniel, thank you for sharing. And we'll get a little bit more into, I guess, what your favorite matches or experiences were during the event momentarily. But first, I'd like to hear about Marcus in terms of his journey to WrestleMania. Because I know, Marcus, you went with a couple of buddies. You obviously had your custom jerseys at the event. And you guys had, a little bit of a different experience. If you could walk me through how you got your tickets, when you got your tickets, where you ended up sitting, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so while I've never traveled with you, Jeff, from our conversations, it's clear that you and I have a lot more in common when it comes to like booking trips than Daniel and I do. So, I mean, when it comes to my journey to WrestleMania, like I think I said this in the last episode, but I fully intended to skip this year. The rumor was it was going to be in Minneapolis, and that just like wasn't calling to me as a trip that I had to make right now. The day that it was announced it was going to be in Vegas, like I distinctly remember I was at the pool here in my development. I got a notification on my watch that WrestleMania had been announced in Vegas. I like jumped out of the pool, grabbed my phone, booked a room at the MGM, booked a room at the Planet Hollywood, and got back in the pool and was like, I don't know if I'm going, but if I am, I'm staying somewhere I want. I didn't stay at either of those hotels, and ultimately, but that's how I plan. Like the second that something comes into the realm that's for me, I'll take the fully refundable approach and go for it. So then in terms of our tickets, I was committed to going, as Jeff said. I sat with we got 5 tickets, so we were all committed to going, and I had pre-sale, and the second that Ticketmaster pre-sale went on sale, I was already in the queue, jumped in, bought my tickets, and that was it. We bought a 2-day package. Again, unlike Daniel, like for me, if I'm traveling for WrestleMania, I'm not gonna not be in the room where it's happening. I think I know you said you think it sounded lame. I think it sounds awesome to be in location adjacent, in a much more relaxed environment, cheaper environment. But that just I didn't fly cross country to not be there. So we bought a 2-day strip. And basically we were sitting directly across from the entrance ramp. So, and that was the seats that we said we wanted. The ticket buying was in my hands. I picked up the moniker of Ticket Marcus over the years, as I'm always the one who's buying our tickets. So that was the view we wanted, and we didn't want to be too low. We didn't want to be on risers. We did that last year. It's like a plastic folding seat. They're not that comfortable to sit in for a long period of time. So I found the exact seats we wanted. They were a little bit more expensive than we were looking for, but it wasn't an issue. I bought the 5, and that we sat the same spot both nights. And what actually ended up happening was, like I said, we were directly across from the ramp, and there was actually a camera. We didn't realize at the time that was like in our row and the couple rows ahead and behind us. So it actually ended up kind of segmenting our row, and the rows at Allegiant Stadium are rather long, which if people are trying to get nuts, go to the bathroom, could be, a bit of a headache. They basically ended up, our row was 9 people, but there was only one way in, one way out. So that was good because it was able to kind of like, oh, someone's going to the bathroom, someone else be like, oh, I'll run out too with them. So it kind of alleviated a lot of the standing, sitting. It was great tickets. I mean, for what we paid, I don't think I really would change anything. I wouldn't ask for anything better. If we wanted a side view, of course, that's a better ticket. It would have cost us a ton more money. For where we were, for what we paid, I think it was great. Only thing would have been if we would have waited a little bit, we probably could have got the same tickets for cheaper. But that's not a chance I'm willing to take based off of the type of planner I just said I am.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you for sharing, Marcus. And to that point, so you said it was directly across from the entrance ramp. So were you on the floor? Were you slightly elevated? Kind of like how?
No, so we were on the first level.
Okay.
And I want to say we were probably row like 15 or 18 in our section. So
was it like the equivalent of like when the Raiders play, they're like behind the end zone, like 15 rows up?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Yep.
Awesome. That's great. I will add this. So I've been to multiple WrestleManias. I went to WrestleMania 17 in Houston at the Astrodome. I'd gotten free tickets through work at the time and flew down to Houston for it. I sat 20th row on the floor, and I swore that I would never do that again. At 5'8", sitting there or standing there, I ended up watching the screen for like 80% of the show, which was not something I'm interested in, especially if I'm paying for my own ticket. It's not something I'm looking to do. So definitely smart to get some kind of elevation, unless you're the first couple of rows, which based on Mania prices now is probably not going to happen for any of the three of us in the near future. Right. Getting some kind of elevation is definitely key.
Yeah, that's like last year we were on risers. We were like maybe row 8, and even that with how there's like 60 rows on the floor now. There's just too many people in front of you. 3 people stand up, you can't see. So I definitely, agree with that. And which one other thing you said was you watching the screen. That's always something that I just like struggle with. Like no matter what, no matter where I am, whether I'm on the floor at in an arena or in nosebleeds, like I find myself often watching the screen because I feel like that's the view that they want you to have. That's right. Where they're kind of hiding things off camera you're not supposed to be seeing. And I always like find myself being like, all right, like look down, be in the moment and like watch what's in the ring. Don't like default to like craning your neck and looking, at a screen.
And remember, that's somebody who's almost as tall as Omos saying that. So, imagine somebody like me who's like half his size. I definitely am staring at the screen. So that's how life treats us sometimes.
Yeah. One thing we should have added this year, it was a much warmer experience. So I think if anyone went to Philadelphia last year, open stadium, it was so nice being in Vegas, but also in an indoor. Massive upgrade.
The other thing, I don't understand how it was physically possible, but the Wi-Fi and the cell service at the stadium was like full bars the whole time. It was like, and as opposed to the last couple of years, it was like, I mentioned this last time, but UConn was in the Final Four, and I was trying to stream, and like in Philly, I couldn't even get a text with the score. And here, I was trying, I wasn't watching anything on my phone, but like full service the whole time. It was great because there's so many people there that, that I know, or, that I want to meet up with for a drink or go, whatever, say hi to. And it was like last year I couldn't do that because I couldn't get in touch with someone. So that was, kudos to them for, the coverage that they have there. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it could be because it's a newer stadium. A lot of newer stadiums are doing better from an infrastructure perspective. I know last year when my
T-Mobile, so it would kind of be a bad look, I suppose.
I guess it would, right? If you're same thing with like Rogers Center, which I think is a media company in Canada. My wife and daughter went to see Taylor Swift at the Rogers Center back in November, and I had read that like $1 gazillion was invested into getting better data for everybody who was there. Because as you'd imagine, 60 or 70,000 Swifties all on their phones the entire time, taking video, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully more and more stadiums take note that this is the experience that consumers want.
Yeah, because it wasn't even Wi-Fi, honestly. I know I said that. It was just cell service straight up.
Which is fantastic. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to eventually get to Monday Night Raw, which happened after Mania. But first, I wanted to walk through the 2 nights of Mania you guys were both at. So Daniel was at night 1, Marcus at night 1 and night 2. What were like your key or like your top 2 or 3 like moments, or kind of like what did you enjoy the most? Just before you get into it, I'll say like last year, Daniel and I, obviously we went to Mania in Philly, and I would say night 2 was better than night 1 last year, and not really much jumped out. Like we enjoyed the indie stuff more than the Mania stuff last year. But putting all that aside and looking straight at Mania from this year, like what did you guys get off your seat and say, man, that was awesome, I really enjoyed that, or that was really cool?
Yeah, I think last year night 2 main event was one of the best wrestling matches ever, and to have been there for that, it set the bar really, really high. And I think that for night 1, starting out with Jey Uso versus Gunther, and having Jey Uso, come in, his entrance, the crowd loves him, and having him win that match and win a championship in the first match, I think was a good way to kind of get the crowd in it. The problem is then after that, the next 2 matches were a little lackluster and things kind of dropped off. For me, I would say night 1, Jey Uso winning the in the opener, Jacob Fatu versus LA Knight. Jacob Fatu is incredible.
Yep.
And then I think Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns versus CM Punk, the main event. I think that those were the 3 matches of the night, and I really don't think that I would love to hear someone try to argue it. Honestly, I feel like they were just kind of the superior matches. The storytelling in that last match, 30-minute match usually could run too long. The storytelling in that match, it was phenomenal. It never got boring, and there was multiple times when the whole place was standing and you thought you knew it was going to happen, and it didn't happen.
Yeah. How about you, Daniel? I know you weren't there for night 2. So from night 1, what were your best memories or experiences?
So first of all, I made the whole of night 1 this year. I didn't leave early like last year.
That's fair.
So definitely left early last year.
Yes.
Very similar to Marcus. So I actually thought that the atmosphere, even in the build-up, the sort of pre-show build-up was much better this year. Like there felt like an energy in the room. And then that opening match was incredible. Jey Uso's like 10-minute entrance was just ridiculous. Something like you kind of had to be there. It's one of those moments, a bit like Marcus said, like you don't watch the screen, you're literally in the moment. Like that was one of those awesome things to see.
Right.
I also loved the Jacob Fatu match. Like I'm a big LA Knight fan, but just to watch that was a fantastic match. It was also the coming off a star as well, because we've kind of known that he can do it. And then obviously the main event, very, very similar. Like the main event was fantastic. So many twists and turns, especially the sort of final twist at the very end. After it looked like Heyman had turned back to Roman. It was a fantastic way to kind of finish it. Again, I agree. The other matches were okay. Like the Rey Fenix, it was pretty cool to see Rey Fenix at WrestleMania. So a guy we've seen a lot in AEW and things like that. But yeah, the energy certainly wasn't there throughout the night. But I thought it peaked nicely at the start and then really finished strong at the end as well.
I also think that the Tiffany Stratton Charlotte match, like I said, there was 3 matches in my mind that were elite. Tiffany Stratton, like the crowd also loves her entrance. She got everyone into it. I just think that the kind of circumstance right now, with the women's matches that they had set up, I'm sure we'll talk about night 2 in a minute.
Of course.
It just wasn't the most exciting women's title match compared to what you had coming night 2. But not to take away from, I think that Tiffany Stratton has a huge future. I think it was a good match, but I think there were 3 elite matches.
Nice. Awesome. So those are your experiences from watching the first night of WrestleMania, the matches in person. Watching it on TV, I would agree with everything you guys said. I think the Jey Uso with his entrance just came across. He's a star. Like the way that the crowd was going when you've got like 60 or 70,000 people that are yeeting with him, bouncing up and down. The lights and such looked awesome. And for me, Fatu was fine. I thought it was on TV, it was okay. But that main event also with everything with Paul Heyman, I thought was pretty incredible. Like seeing CM Punk come out with Living Color performing his entrance song once again, which he did. I think it was WrestleMania 29 in MetLife Stadium years ago. Just love seeing it. I love Living Color. I think I've mentioned before that I saw Living Color at Epcot maybe about like 7 or 8 years ago. Got a picture with basically the whole band. Awesome. They played their 3 or 4 songs, and that was it. Lots and lots of fun. So definitely great seeing them on TV. Before getting to night 2, wanted to get your experiences on leaving the stadium. So last year, when Daniel and I left night 1, we left during the main event. So after the entrances took place, we took off. Everyone rolled their eyes at us. It was like, what's going on? We said where we were going. They had no idea what we were talking about, and so we took off. Then we spent some time trying to find the Uber lot in Philly, which didn't really exist. Somebody tried charging us like $200 for our Uber ride back or taxi ride back. Eventually, we found what we had to and got back to our hotel. I'd read some reports that, as soon as night 1 was over, it was just a mess outside. Like, can you guys talk through your experience getting to your hotel? Was it not as ridiculous as it sounds? Like, what did it look like?
Yeah, I actually had a pretty cool experience. I decided to walk back. I walked there and walked back. So getting out the stadium was a bit of a nightmare, but it wasn't horrendous. They didn't have enough gates open, which didn't help. But once you got out, it was just a sea of people. As long as you were willing to just kind of get in that line and go. But I actually probably 2 minutes outside the stadium, started chatting to this British guy and his kids there. He'd saved up all year to bring his 2 kids.
Oh,
And I literally chatted to him for the whole sort of next 40 minutes as we walked over through the Luxor around. And he was telling me all about like what he'd sacrificed to be there and how he brought his kids. And it was actually just cool, really cool. Like, because obviously being there on my own, walking back myself, like literally just struck up a conversation, spoke to him the whole way until he got to New York, went to his hotel room. So that was really cool.
nice.
But I heard a lot of really bad stories, but my experience wasn't terrible. If you were just patient, I didn't try and run up the wrong way up escalators.
I was going to bring that up. I saw a couple of TikTok videos of people trying to run up the escalator, and some of them ended well for, some of them, let's say, not so much. But what can you do?
That's the thing is like, I hate to sound not belittling, but like, if you don't do dumb things, like, you won't have dumb experiences. So like, I mean, I got very lucky from the standpoint of, like I said, we were directly across from the entrance ramp.
Yep.
Did not know it at the time, but the main entrance to Allegiant Stadium was right behind our seats.
Awesome.
So we literally walked out of our section, walked right out the main entrance. There was, you go down the stairs, they're giving out Prime, they're giving out Minute Maid, they're giving out candy. And you walked a couple hundred feet, and then there was basically like, if you went to the right, you took this bridge. And the bridge, you walk over a highway, and then you end up at
Luxor,
the Mandalay Bay, I want to say, or what have you. Or if you go straight at the entrance to the bridge, there's the Uber lot. So I made it out before some of my friends went to the restroom, wanted to check the souvenir stand. So I made it out first. And I got out no problem. I was standing at the foot of the bridge. And I just kind of started watching this whole like overcrowding unfold. And like, really, honestly, what they need is they need to put up a fence so it makes it, you're walking straight and you have to make a hard right to get on the bridge. Instead, all these people kind of started branching out a little bit, and then you get to the bridge and I have to jump over like a 4-foot like rail onto the bridge, and people were falling and grabbing people and whatever else. And it was like, eventually there was great service. Like I said, we found everyone, and we just kind of like, we decided, because where we were staying was not walkable from the arena. So we took an Uber, but like, once my buddy was like, hey, I'm walking out of the arena now, I ordered an Uber and a Lyft to see which would come first and what the prices were. Had both, in the hopper. We kind of like arced a little bit to try to get around this main mob at the front. By the time we all got together, we got our Lyft in about 10 minutes.
That's not bad.
And we were back like very quickly after that. Traffic around the arena wasn't terrible. Everyone was going the same way. So it was like a little backed up, but there's, highways and roads for it. And I really didn't think it was that bad. And then the next morning I saw these videos of like people running up the down escalator, and it's like, oh, WrestleMania almost killed people. It's like, no, you almost killed yourself because you decided that you should try to run up a down escalator. You could have waited. You could have walked the stairs. You chose not to.
Yeah.
So I really didn't find it that bad.
Gotcha. So the only point of comparison I would make is, so it sounds like it wasn't that bad this year. I think it was the last time WrestleMania was at MetLife Stadium. I think New Jersey Transit really, really messed up in the fact that I think people were stranded there till like 5, 6 in the morning because nobody told New Jersey Transit that WrestleMania would be over after midnight. And by that time, trains were limited, and it was a bit of a mess. I didn't go to that one. I think it was like right before COVID. So I think it was like 2019.
That was Mania 35. Yeah, that was 2019.
Yeah, and the stories that I read about that were it was just not good. So hopefully, if it ever makes it back to MetLife Stadium in Jersey again, they take note. Although with that point, I would say, so Daniel said earlier, I really don't like the idea of WrestleManias in outdoor stadiums in the Northeast in April or March. It just feels very silly. When I went to WrestleMania, I think it was in 2013 in MetLife, like it lightly snowed. Last year when we were in Philly, it was chilly. Because again, it's like early April and it could be in the 30s as it had been or whatever. So, I've been to it in the Astrodome. I've been to it. I mean, years ago when it was like Madison Square Garden, I loved it, but they'll never do another 16,000 seat stadium, I don't think, arena for Mania, because they're leaving so much money on the table, or the seats would cost way too much money for anyone to show up. But I hope they take note that if they're going to be in the North, put it in indoor stadiums or something. Don't put it in outdoor arenas or outdoor stadiums like this. It feels kind of silly. I don't know. With that said, so then Daniel went to a party for night 2, and Marcus and his friends went to WrestleMania again for night 2. First of all, Marcus, similar experience, I assume, same seats, same setup, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, entry in, same thing. We walked right in. All right, and we were right by the exit when we left. We did walk to a hotel the second night, which again, we did that walk over the bridge. I didn't think it was that bad.
Right.
As long as you just like kept moving, like, you know, you're able to make your own space. Yeah. So same setup, same everything. We got there a little early. Night 2, night 1, we had a little bit of a fiasco. I know later on you said you maybe want to have like a top story of WrestleMania, and if we get there, my night 1 ride in was that. So
that's fair, and it meant top story of any kind of like wrestling experience. If you know, if your top story was from this WrestleMania, that'll be fantastic. But we'll get to that at some point.
Okay.
Cool. And then Daniel, I assume no issue getting to your party. You got there. Was Danhausen sitting there, or any wrestlers or anything? Or
Danhausen was not there, but he had been there previously, so I missed him the day before. Yeah, great setup. Really cool brewery, Ellis Island Brewery. They had a ton of big screens up. Great food menu. Really nicely done. Full sound. Yeah, pretty impressive.
Nice. Any WrestleMania specials there? Like, did they have the, you know, the CM Punk cocktail or something like that, or anything, you know, jumping out at you to kind of get the wrestling fan?
That's a good question. They didn't. They had a lot of fun giveaways and things going on. Like, there was spin the wheel, and they had like a ton of like raffles for some memorabilia and things like that. But no,
Nice.
they weren't as creative as that. I won't give them credit for that. But it was just a cool experience. I'd say there was maybe 150, 200 people. Just basically like it was like an NFL game, watching what you see in a bar, but just obviously for wrestling, which is pretty fun to be involved in.
Was there any cover charge? Or you at a bar? I mean, at the bar where you had a seat, kind of like, what did that experience seem like?
Yeah, this one, it was literally, I think it was like you'd spend them at $20. It was like a nothing cover charge. Like,
That's
it was,
not bad.
yeah, it was like something that was always going to happen. And because there was a lot of them. I did look a lot. There's a lot of them with some high cover charges.
Yep.
There's a lot of cool events, but no, this was one. And again, I hadn't even decided, because even after day 1, I thought I could go to day 2. And then I decided, no, I've always wanted to do this. So I was like, while I'm here, I'm going to take it, and we're going to touch. I also went to Raw, which we're going to touch on later.
Yep.
So I had some more wrestling to come afterwards. So.
Nice. And to add to what Marcus said earlier about how me and him kind of, I guess, plan things similarly versus Daniel, just on a side note, WrestleMania is going to be in New Orleans next year, and Daniel and I have already put our deposit down on tickets for next year. So that shows you how over a year out, we've already put our deposit down versus this year. It was 36 hours before the event that Daniel paid.
And clearly, that was all my idea to put the deposit for next year.
Oh, obviously. Definitely. Yeah. I think the past would definitely.
And hotels. And we have hotels booked as well.
Which I do appreciate that. Yes, Daniel's already booked it, so we can use his status to hopefully get upgraded to something. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so you both obviously have different experiences for night 2. From an overall match perspective, I have my perspective on which matches I liked watching at home. Do you guys want to talk briefly through what you liked the most about night 2's show?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a coincidence, but the 2 nights were very different. But I actually felt the same way. I liked the opener, which was night 2 was Io Sky versus Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley. I think that potentially could have been the best wrestling in terms of WrestleMania all weekend. And then I like the men's mid-card match in the middle of the night, which was Dominic Mysterio versus Braun Breaker, Finn Balor, and Penta for the Intercontinental Championship. And I actually really did like the main event, which I know is super controversial. And I'm happy to explain why. But I just feel like from the storytelling aspect and what's going on in wrestling, I think it was written perfectly. And then, of course, the other thing that was fantastic during the night was Randy Orton wrestling Joe Hendry. It was a 3-minute match, but the reaction that Joe Hendry got, being, you know, the TNA World Champions, that's a company that WWE does not own, showing up at the event, his entrance, he's so over. And then it was just like everything was done perfectly there, even, you know, towards the end when he does the smile, takes an RKO, and then Randy Orton stands up, does his smile. It was perfect. Like, that guy, he's got a bright future as well. Yeah, Marcus, so I would say those were my standouts.
After my comment on Joe Hendry on the first part, I really enjoyed the RKO as well.
Fair. Nice. So Daniel, did you have similar thoughts in terms of your favorite matches for night 2, or kind of like what was your experience like that you liked?
Yeah, the women's championship match to open it was incredible. Like, even the atmosphere in the brewery was fantastic. Like, that was just the way to kick off was great. I also really enjoyed Dominic Mysterio match. I thought, just to see how over he became, like, because he's meant to be a heel, that reaction that he got, and he's awesome. So to actually just see that turn in that stadium. And then the way that he left the ring and they went back in again, it was just like a really, really cool moment for someone who's worked really hard to get to where he is. So that was fun. Becky Lynch's return was cool, I suppose. Like the pop was fun. It was good to see her back. The match was a bit meh, but it was fine. Also didn't make a lot of sense then with the storyline that went into Raw the night after. But it's always cool to get at least one of those big pops. And then in all seriousness, as a Scotsman, I was super happy to see a Scottish guy turn up. Not only one of them, we had two Scots on the card. So obviously Drew McIntyre, his tweet was hilarious as well. When he tweeted halfway through the match, bored at work. That was just and as a sarcastic Scotsman, it makes perfect sense. And then obviously Joe Hendry, all joking aside, it was pretty cool and a pretty cool entrance. And to Marcus's point, was really done. The storytelling was fantastic on that.
Nice. Yeah, I think I agree with both of you on all of that. I think my number one match from both nights, similar to Marcus, was the opener for night 2 of Io Sky, Bianca Belair, and Rhea Ripley. Going into it, I thought there was no way that Io was going to retain. I thought they were going to either have Bianca or Rhea win it. It was a fantastic match. What I did think was interesting was it seemed like it was the same ending in that match as the Dominic Mysterio match in terms of I don't remember exactly what the chain of events was, but it seemed like a very similar conclusion, which surprised me. But I mean, I guess that's cool to see as both of them, I think executed it pretty well.
I noticed neither you mentioned the Logan Paul match. Was that not your favorite over the 2 days? No.
The irony when we talk about my WrestleMania Night 1 story, it involves one of those two guys. But I actually, unfortunately, I missed that whole match. So I have watched it since, but that was a food bathroom break situation for me.
Makes sense.
Which was a long match, but there was a lot of people in the arena. So.
Yeah, my highlight from that match was probably Karrion Kross and his run-in. As I think they could do a lot more with him. I'm a huge fan of his. When he was released a few years ago, I saw him at WrestlePro, got a picture with him and with Scarlett. He seems like a good dude, seems legit. He seems like he really wants to win it. I know Daniel saw him at Bloodsport also that week as well. So really hoping for big things out of Karrion Kross. One thing I do want to add that wasn't brought up from this weekend as well was the announcement that WWE bought AAA Wrestling, the biggest or one of the biggest wrestling promotions in Mexico. For me, that was pretty cool. I mean, that was definitely a great way to get a footprint in Mexico. They have a lot of fantastic wrestlers. It also blocks AEW and TNA from using certain guys that they've used more recently in the past. Vikingo is definitely the one that comes.
It doesn't block TNA. Because they've used Vikingo since.
You're right.
It blocks AEW.
Yeah, okay. Withdrawn then. You're right. Blocks AEW, which Vikingo's been in and out of AEW for a while now. Curious what happens with Commander or some guys like that too. But like Vikingo, like I'm a huge fan of Vikingo. For those of you who don't know, he's a ridiculous high flyer. He does some just amazing stuff that Rey Mysterio in the 90s was like the innovator at that time. Like what Vikingo does is like next level, which is crazy. But it makes me think about the story of when Daniel and I went to GCW Wrestling at the Hammerstein back in January. And I guess it was intermission or after the show or whatever. And a lot of the wrestlers had meet and greets downstairs. And I'm walking around trying to find Vikingo. He's just standing in a corner behind a table, like by himself. Like there was like no attention on him. Like he had a match. He looked great in the match. But also the fact that he's standing there, he's got his glasses on. Like he legit, I mean, he's shorter than I am. And I'm short to begin with. So like he was very like non-menacing. So to see him there, I got a picture with him was great. But then to see him get like a little moment in the Chad Gable Ray Phoenix match, I thought was pretty cool, where he kicked Gable or whatever name he's going by in the head. That was just kind of fun, and I'm definitely curious to see like going forward what happens with this whole AAA acquisition by WWE.
Yeah, I think the acquisition's awesome. It was funny because how they announced it, it was like first they said like, oh, we're doing a Worlds Collide, and I was like, which is where they're basically going to have AAA wrestlers wrestle WWE NXT wrestlers. And I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then like 3 hours later, it was like they had this announcement, before WrestleMania during the pre-show that they've acquired AAA, and they had a lot of, AAA alumni who were with WWE there and Vikingo.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see what happens. I'm very excited for Worlds Collide. I have to say, I actually did not like how they got Vikingo involved at WrestleMania. I think I appreciated the shot he took, but I feel like for him to jump the rail at the end to help Ray Phoenix out of the ring, I feel like he should have come in and helped him during the match, and kind of given him more of an introduction to the WWE universe, if you will, the WrestleMania crowd. That being said, like I have no doubt that he will be a part of WrestleMania, multiple WrestleManias in the future. He is, when you watch him wrestle, like, I mean, I always, when I'm looking at these guys, I'm just enamored by the athleticism.
Yes.
And that's why when people say, wrestling isn't real, I'm like, yeah, but these dudes are all athletes. But like, you watch that guy jump forward while he's flipping backwards, it is mind blowing how he can move.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, maybe it wasn't the greatest execution, but at the same time, I look at it almost like the Joe Hendry moment at WrestleMania. Like, regardless of how it went off, the fact that he got a moment and he was there, and this is like an introduction to the WrestleMania crowd, I thought was just pretty cool to see.
That I definitely agree with, for sure.
Cool. So that was night 2 of WrestleMania. Before we get into anything else in terms of just overall wrestling thoughts and moments, the weekend wasn't over at this point. So I think that was Marcus's last show. However, Daniel hung around and went to Monday Night Raw the next day, which for those of you that don't know, Raw the night after WrestleMania is usually the biggest Raw of the year. So it's almost like the brand new season. Oftentimes they'll introduce new wrestlers, they'll bring in people from NXT. This is oftentimes when like stories get reset or kind of like go into full throttle mode. So Daniel, take me through when you decided to go to Raw and like where you sat.
Yeah, so Raw was kind of in my mind when I booked it, but I booked 6 days in Vegas, and then I actually ended up changing my flight and added another extra night to my hotel to stay for the Monday night. So that took me to 7 days in Vegas. It's kind of another one of those bucket list things. Like the Raw after Mania is famous because you've generally got a ton of fans. It's got like more like a soccer style atmosphere, very, very different. And it definitely didn't like let down at all. If anything, I probably actually enjoyed it more than Mania, if I'm being totally honest. It was just incredible. Like there was like I could literally talk for a whole hour on it. Like just John Cena's coronation, as they call it. He walked out to boos, to cheers, to boos, and it was like a 15-minute crazy session. Then you had the NXT champion Stephanie Vaquer coming and challenging Io Sky, which was just an incredible match. It went almost 15-16 minutes, and it was fantastic. And then throughout the night, there some guys came back. Rusev, Miro turned up, so that was a good pop. He came in, destroyed a couple of people. And then the main event was fantastic. Really, that was when Braun Breaker aligned himself with Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. But also, it was just on the way that so many great calls, like Roman Reigns came out, CM Punk came out. Just there are a lot of big pops and a fantastic atmosphere. So really one of those events where from minute 1 to the last minute, it flew by. It was like 3 hours, but felt like it was 45 minutes. Not a lot of wrestling on the card, though, is kind of what I've learned from it. There's not a lot of wrestling on it. It's a lot of hype, which is cool. But I'd seen a lot of wrestling by then, so I was okay with it being cool. But definitely a highlight, and next year we're doing it again. It's like one of these things now. If you're going to go to Mania, I think you have to go to Raw after Mania.
Definitely. And to that point, I mean, I've already scoped out with you what we're going to do next year. So more to come. What I'll say also interesting point too is that Raw airs live at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So that means when you're out in Vegas, it starts, I mean, the Raw portion of it starts at 5 p.m. Eastern time, but they also have some matches they record before it. So what do you start at like 4:30 or so?
Yeah, doors opened at 3, and then they had some main event tapings before it. So to be honest, I didn't get there for all of that. I got there like 15 minutes before it started. It was also talking about like the experience going to the Allegiant. And I lied. It's Allegiant. It's T-Mobile sponsors the Raw Arena, so they haven't even Allegiant's not. They're in airlines. So I don't know. So ignore that previous comment. But T-Mobile, the Wi-Fi is good in there as well. But it's just a very different experience because you went from a 70,000 seater stadium with all of those crowds to actually a much easier experience. It was a 15-minute walk from my hotel. It was like going to a hockey game. So you went from like thousands and thousands. So it was back to much more like a normal type event. And the location is fantastic because you're right in the center of the Las Vegas Strip. Really easy to get to. Came out, you're right beside plenty of bars, restaurants, and to your point, you're done by 8:30 at night. I think I was in a bar by 9:05.
That sounds amazing.
Which was perfect for me. So
right. So you experienced, I guess, like all sizes, right? So you went from the small indie shows of like, then the ID show probably did a few hundred people, right, give or take, to a Bloodsport probably did about 2,000. To Raw did probably about like 17, 18,000 to WrestleMania at 60. So you experienced it all.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, kind of all. Yeah.
I had done Raw after Mania a couple times, and I did it 2 years ago in LA, and I just kind of thought the show fell flat. And then this year I was like, oh, if I can get out early, I would. And of course, like it was phenomenal this year. But the irony of it is, so I was like, oh, well, I'll just watch it in the hotel and whatever else. So because they're on Netflix now, not on USA, I was like, we connected our phone to the TV, and it was like, this is not set up for live streaming. So because it was a
no.
live show, we couldn't. So I was like laying in my bed watching it on my phone, just like down the street from where it was happening. And then around the time that it was wrapping up, I headed to the airport. Monday, I went to WWE World to get some last loose ends in. Again, convention we talked about last week. Couple more, photo ops, and grabbed a couple extra souvenirs and some trading cards, and had a much more relaxing Monday than any other day I had over the course of my time there.
Nice. And then Marcus, I assume you flew home Tuesday, and Daniel, you as well?
Marcus, you went Monday night, didn't you?
I took the red eye Monday night.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then Daniel, I assume you flew home Tuesday, only to find out that your wife had sold the house and all your stuff was gone. Is that correct?
Pretty much. Apart from my wrestling figures, they were still.
It was just one big storage pod, basically, on what used to be your driveway with all of your wrestling and sports stuff.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a pretty good summary. Yeah.
Nice. So now that we've kind of gotten to the end of the wrestling weekend, so I assume Daniel, it sounds like from your experiences, you enjoyed it, and you would do it again.
Yeah, I'll think about it. Yeah,
okay,
if someone else is going to plan it for me, I'll definitely do it again. So,
well, I'll call my guys, see what we can do.
100%. Yeah, great experience.
Awesome, Marcus, you as well.
Great experience, loved it, would absolutely do it again. That being said, I don't think that WrestleMania 42 is my again. I think I'll be sitting out New Orleans and waiting to see where WrestleMania 43 is.
Gotcha.
It has to be Minneapolis for you, Marcus.
Well, so they've already announced Minneapolis for SummerSlam next year, I think. So it's probably not going to be Mania so soon. And didn't they announce Indy is going to have a bunch of different events? So at some point, Mania goes back to Indy, I guess, right?
Yes.
Do we think it ever goes to Europe?
I'm hoping. I mean, that'd be a great excuse for me to, check off another country on my bucket list. As currently, I have 4 countries total. So if I can get a 5th country, even more streams for the podcast, that would be fantastic. So to your point from before, next year we'll be in New Orleans. Daniel and I are already working on our plans for the year. Marcus sounds like he'll be sitting out until we convince him to come with us.
100%. That's, like I said, it doesn't seem like it's in the cards. That's not a hard no. The door is ajar for sure.
Got it. That's fair. So we are running not as late in time as last week, but definitely running towards the end. But I did want to ask you guys each, and this is just could be anything about this weekend, WrestleMania in general, or just your wrestling fandom as a whole. Do you have like one unique story or experience that you'd like to kind of share in terms of what you kind of look back and like, hey, that was kind of weird, or that was kind of cool, or kind of like what that moment was? Marcus, do you want to go first? Since it sounds like earlier on you had one you started alluding to.
Sure. Yeah, I'll keep them both short, but I'll give one from this year and then one in general. So from this year, real quick, just on our way to WrestleMania Night 1, it was just like the perfect comedy of errors. We were, late to leave, and then we couldn't find the Uber pickup, and then the Uber couldn't find us, and then, we were running crazy late when our goal was to get there early. We get in an Uber, finally, the driver starts driving towards the strip, sees the traffic, makes a hard U-turn, feet off of the Vegas Strip, and then starts speeding down this street. And as we're sitting at a light, I was like, why are all these children sprinting across the street? I'm talking kids 6 to 10, just running from every direction behind us, in front of us, darting across 6 lanes of traffic. And as we get closer, we see there's this blue Prime truck, which is a hydration drink. That sponsors wrestling and that's owned by Logan Paul. And they were giving out these exclusive bottles that were only available at WrestleMania.
Right. And
I was like, oh, I get it. And then as we get even closer, I was like, that's Logan Paul giving out Prime hydration bottles. So I said this last week, but if I didn't get my point across, how I look at wrestling, I am strange, to put it nicely. I look at the WWE roster as a checklist, and I need to meet every single person. And Logan Paul is not someone who does any of these appearances or anything. So one of the guys I was with was like, should we jump out of the Uber and just pay it and get another one? And I was like, absolutely not. It took us an hour to get this. We can't do that. And the third guy we were with just chimes in and was like, yells at the driver. He's like, if I give you $20 cash, can you pull in this parking lot for 3 minutes? Let us jump out, go take a picture, and get back in. He was like, yeah, no problem. So we pull into this parking lot of this gas station. We run out. We run over to Logan Paul, take quick pictures, get back in the Uber. My friend gives him $20 cash, and we like walked into WrestleMania more or less as it was starting.
Nice.
So that was just like the high that I had since I love meeting wrestlers, and that was like happens stance, right time. Everything had to go wrong for it to go right.
Right.
And I mean, again, to meet him is something that doesn't happen often.
Right.
And then along those lines, obviously, my best wrestling stories, it's also going to be a meet and greet. So WrestleMania 29 was in New Jersey. And it was right after Hurricane Sandy had hit New York in New Jersey. And at that point, I already had my tickets for the event. I was going with a couple friends, going with my dad. But someone had posted something on this message board that I was on that there was this event called Superstars for Sandy that was happening at Cipriani's in New York City. And without really knowing much, other than I think tickets were like $100, $125, which at the time seemed like a lot for not knowing what was going to happen. Bought a ticket, went, showed up this event. It was open bar. Past doors open bar. And I was like, well, $100 open bar, like at a nice place. Like I could make this work anyway. And there was like a ton of wrestlers that were there. And basically when you walked in, they took all bags from you. So you weren't getting autographs that night. Vince McMahon was there. He took a couple pictures, slipped out the side. The Rock, same thing. John Cena was just standing there taking pictures with everybody. Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, Linda McMahon, the Bella twins, Mick Foley. At the time, he wasn't a huge deal, but I got a picture with Cody Rhodes. I got pictures with a ton of like elite WWE wrestlers in this awesome event. Everyone was dressed up nicely. And it was just like a once in a lifetime. It was a fundraiser. So you're doing good. You get a reward for being there with your photo ops. And I think for me, that was like my most unique wrestling experience back in, I guess that was 2013.
2013, yeah.
And definitely something that like whenever I look back, whenever I go to WrestleMania, I'm always like, oh, it'd be so cool if there was an event like that again. And as far as I know, that hasn't really been done again.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing, Marcus. I appreciate it. And that sounds awesome. I do remember hearing about it at the time, but I heard about it too late. And I was like, how do people even find out about this? But it sounds like you saw on a message board and that's how it went. So it sounds like a really amazing experience. So thank you for sharing. Daniel, I know you've probably spent more of your life overseas than here, and wrestling experiences in Europe are probably slightly different than here, but what would you like to share, if anything?
Yeah, a couple actually, and they are very different in Europe. And to be honest, I think I said the very first time I was on, I kind of lost a bit of love towards the end in Europe because it was hard to get independent shows. So my love really came back when I came to the States. And I'll tell one story, one about then and one from this week. But the first one is actually, we talked about my wife a few minutes ago, but actually she did come to a wrestling event with me. So she was super excited to go. Well, that's a lie. She was not super excited.
But she was there.
I'm going to lie. She agreed reluctantly to come to Newark to watch SmackDown. So, and it was like one of those make or break moments. It's like, she's either going to love this and she's going to want to come with me, like all these cool people I see, or more likely not. I think within 5 minutes, she was asking, why was there grown-up men carrying belts? And Lycra. How long does this last for? Is there breaks? Yeah, it was not a great experience. She sat there for the whole sort of 2.5 hours. Yeah, not the greatest. But the good thing is she's never asked to go back. So I remember, the only match I remember, the Hardy Brothers were on it. I can't even remember much about the matches because I was so just trying to make sure she was happy. Drinks, food, whatever. I didn't actually watch much of it, but so it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing. So she's never wanted to go back. So
I guess at that point, Paul is happy that I've become your wrestling wife since then. So
exactly, because all my other really close friends don't want to go to wrestling either. And then the other experience I think it'd be remiss if we didn't mention was I was lucky enough to be at the Joey Janela Spring Break a couple of weeks ago where Sabu had his last match as well. So being there front row for that. So if anyone doesn't know, Sabu was a hardcore wrestler made famous for ECW. Sadly, he passed away last week. So it was kind of a privilege to be at that match. It was a crazy match for a 60-year-old guy to do what he did. But to be up close and personal with him in that match, like front row, he was in front of me a lot of the time. So I think it was one of those experiences that at the time, I didn't really appreciate what it is now. But to have sort of been at that and then see what's come out since and the outpouring of love, it was definitely something we wanted to try and touch on. But yeah, so a pretty recent experience that will sort of live with me for kind of the wrong reasons for the rest of my life.
Got it. Well, Daniel, thank you for sharing. And, obviously, we'll see how we can continue to keep these wrestling, memories and stories and journeys alive as we go forward. I did want to add a couple of my own. So, I mean, I've been a wrestling fan for like 40 years at this point. So I've got lots of different experiences, specifically over the last, let's say, 25 or 30 years since I was old enough to go to stuff by myself. I've talked about how I was in a WWE Sunday Night Heat commercial. I talked, I think a few weeks ago, about how I caught Spike Dudley's beer can and sliced my finger open and was the hospital over it. Two stories I think I want to add on top of that. So one of them is probably the weirdest story ever. So for those that don't know, WWE used to have a wrestling show called Shotgun Saturday Night. So the first, let's say, 2 or 3 months of it, this was back in 1997, they used to have wrestling shows at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday in like random places, in bars, in just random places you would never see a show. I went to it back in, I think it was January, February of 97. They had it in Penn Station. So the train station in New York City, they advertised ahead of time there'll be a show there. It was like legitimately right in the middle of the station. You walk in, there's a wrestling ring there. It was amazing. If you go back on YouTube, I think they've posted the entire show. Like, it looks ridiculous. Like, at one point, The Undertaker, Tombstone pile drives Triple H on the escalator, and you see it go down. Like, it was really amazing. With that said, I stood about first or second row for that show, because at that point they didn't put seats. You basically had to get there early and claim a spot. Before the show started, at the time, Vince McMahon was one of the commentators that would come out. So I was standing there. He's walking over. He's talking to random people. He's high-fiving. He walks near me. And this is just one of the weirdest kind of like memories that I have probably of wrestling just ever. I put my right hand out to shake his hand. He's half paying attention. He puts his left hand out and he's just holding my hand. Like, legitimately for about 30 to 45 seconds, he's like, I'm not sure what to do because I'm like a 19-year-old kid at this point. He's holding my hand and he's talking to somebody else. Like, I really wish this happened like 30 years later, because then we could have had like, cell phone pictures or video of whatever, because there's no footage of this. The picture does not exist. But legitimately, I held hands with Vince McMahon for like 45 seconds. At least it felt that way at the time. And I have no real way to explain like why it happened, outside of maybe he's distracted, or I don't know, maybe a fetish. I couldn't really tell you what was going on there. He's a weird guy. We all know this at this point based on all the stories that have come out. But like, looking back, I'm like that doesn't happen, right? Like, I've met Stephanie McMahon a couple of times through work. Shane McMahon, I think I talked to once at an XFL game. Linda, I don't know if I've ever met. But Vince, this is my one and only ever interaction with him. And I could tell the world that me and Vince McMahon held hands for like 45 seconds. So that happened. Other things that I would say, so real quick, in 2015, similar to the charity event that Marcus went to, I won via an auction. I think it was like Charity Buzz or something like that, the opportunity to be a guest timekeeper for a WWE house show. So based on that, I won the auction. It got me 4 tickets. So myself, my wife, and my kids went to the show. And for one of the matches, I got to sit ringside with JoJo, who was the ring announcer at the time. And I got to ring the bell, which was pretty neat, because that's what timekeepers do. I got to be in the ring while they did the intros. I actually got an introduction like down the runway into the ring, which was really, really cool as well. I got video of that, which I'll post at some point. Really, really just amazing experience. A couple of my friends or people that I knew of were in the crowd too. So I have some neat pictures of me from different angles. So that was cool. What I'd say is, before the show, part of what we got also was they let us hang out by the ring, get some pictures. So lots of random wrestlers would come out. So like Darren Young, who's in New Japan Pro Wrestling now, he was just stretching in the ring. My daughters at the time were, I want to say, 5 and 7. So I have video of Darren Young showing them how to run the ropes, which is adorable. Really, really cool. Really enjoy seeing that, back in time. Additionally, like Wade Barrett came out, got a picture with him, Billy Kidman, Tamina, a bunch of them, whatever. Just an awesome experience. And again, looking back, it wasn't that much money. I mean, in 2015, I guess it felt like it was, but right now, it's not really that much considering what I guess me and Daniel paid for WrestleMania last year. So it's just funny how, like, to what Marcus said before, like, looking back in time, you're like, I only paid that, but at the time, like, it was a huge investment. Again, I guess 10 years ago also, maybe it was based on what I was making then versus now. So life is weird like that. I don't know. Lastly, and I have other stories too, but one of the things, so similar to my story about how I cut my finger open, my wife's first Ring of Honor wrestling show, Death Before Dishonor 2003, I think it was. We sat front row center. If you ever watched the show or watched it on, I guess, Ring of Honor Honor Club, look for a guy with a Rangers jersey sitting front row center with a girl with a yellow shirt on next to him. You see a young Beth and Jeff sitting there. During one of the matches, Masada, who was like a hardcore wrestler, leans over the guardrail, and I guess I didn't tell my wife what to or what not to do, and tries to take her chair. She's wearing open-toed shoes. She doesn't get up. He drags her basically across the floor, and her foot slams into the guardrail and her toe gets busted open. She's been to very few shows since then, and this is on me. Like, I should have said something ahead of time. She ended up having to go to the back and getting I don't know, a Band-Aid, and then she got a tetanus shot also out of that because it's not really a great situation. She wasn't thrilled. I wasn't thrilled. But I mean, life goes on. It was what it was. With that said, certain, what's that, Marcus?
I said, at least you guys made it after that.
We did. I mean, at that point, we weren't even engaged yet. We think we got engaged about 2 months later. So she was a good sport about it. I mean, as we've gotten older, she's gotten to less wrestling shows, but I mean, I've also gotten more confident that I've gotten to a lot more shows by myself since then. And I found other like-minded individual friends who will go with me as well. So, just wasn't meant to be. She'll go occasionally, but, not as she once did, but that's how life goes sometimes. I did want to thank both Daniel and Marcus for joining us again for part 2 of A Week in Vegas. As a reminder, last year, Daniel, myself, and our buddy Steve did A Week in Philly. I believe it's like episode 3 or episode 4. Definitely check it out. A lot of really great, crazy, and random adventures in Philadelphia for Wrestlemania last year. But I did want to thank Marcus and Daniel for joining me this year. Any last thoughts or words before we roll the credits? Daniel shaking his head no. Marcus is saying no.
Thanks for a full 2 and a bit hours, Jeff. Great to get a chance to share. And thanks again, Marcus, for a great experience. It was great hanging out in Vegas.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I guess that's a good closing, is that it was nice to, get to spend time, obviously, without Jeff. But we said this last week, but it really is crazy how, this world of wrestling, like, some people look at it and they're like, this is fake or it's not real. How could you watch this? Whatever it is. But like, it really, you make friendships over it. And, I mean, every movie is scripted too, and people still go and love those. So, but it's definitely a huge part of my life. And, to get to go to Vegas and see people who I see once a year, if that, it's one of the best parts of my year.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Daniel. With that, the month of Marcus on the podcast has unfortunately come to an end, as we've now had Marcus on 3 of the last 4 episodes, I believe. So, Marcus, thank you. I'm sure we'll definitely cross paths again sometime soon in a future episode. And Daniel, I know we've got a lot more coming up soon too. So, guys, thank you so much. With that said, I want to remind everybody that you can always find the show on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. We now have a TikTok, also at Everybody Has a Story Pod. So go to TikTok and find out some really cool videos and show clips I'm posting there, along with the clip that went viral from about a year and a half ago. That got me 2.5 million views. It's crazy, but it's still up there. Still getting hits, still getting likes, which is crazy. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77 for all things Seltzer77. You can check me out at Seltzer77. Reminder that the email for the show is at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. So if you have anything that you want to send to me, anything you want to talk about, sponsorships, whatever, definitely check it out. I want to remind everybody that we are on all podcast platforms. So from a video perspective, Spotify and YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod. We are audio everywhere else. Those 2 places, along with Apple, along with Pandora, Amazon, iHeartRadio. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can definitely find this podcast on it. For all things Jeff Seltzer, you can check me out at jeffseltzer.com. With that said, thank you once again for joining me on this journey. We'll have some more fun conversations in the next coming weeks. But in the meantime, have an amazing day and take care of yourselves.
Brought to you by jeffseltzer.com.